What's up, y'all? One Piece One Life here, and guys, some of my favorite arcs are the ones where all the Straw Hats are involved in some way. And when I say that, I mean specifically in terms of fighting. I mean, if you think back to all of the amazing times that the Straw Hats had when they were going up against big opponents, right? Alabasta, when they were all fighting off the Baroque agents. Enies Lobby and their stand against CP9 to get Robin back. Fishman Island with the crew all gathering and freeing Shirahoshi, freeing the island, being the technical saviors and all. Side note, Fishman Island is nowhere near my favorite arcs, that's not at all what I'm saying, but just specifically that part where the Straw Hats got to show off what they learned during the time skip, that's what I think was fire. The rest of Fishman Island can go in the garbage, except for the Otohime flashback. Now that I think about it, I'll probably do my favorite arcs ranked for some sort of milestone on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe. Where were we? Oh yeah, and then Wano, when the crew came together on Onigashima and started fighting off the Beast Pirates. I really love seeing how these one-on-ones go, because they pit the Straw Hats' unique skill sets against the unique skill sets of their opponents, and they have to figure out new ways. That's the thing about battles in One Piece. I guess more so in the pre-time skip era, but even now it still could happen. People have different abilities, which makes the fights very interesting. Not to mention the potential for the Straw Hats to learn new things, new moves, get new power-ups, which is become a commonplace in a lot of the arcs, like Enies Lobby, Wano, etc. But an arc that could have been like that, but ultimately wasn't? Dressrosa. Dressrosa has a lot of problems for me, which will probably take a video in and of itself just to describe those problems. But one of the major ones that I never really understood was that the Straw Hats really did seem set to take on the Doflamingo family, but then they didn't, and I get it. Oda was separating half of the crew so that they can go with Sanji to Zou, so that they can then set up the whole Cake Island plotline early. I get all that, but I'm just saying we missed out on some what I think could have been pretty amazing fights. Not to mention that there were a lot of enemies to go around, so that would have easily been enough for all 9 Straw Hats, Law, and some still left over for the rest of the Alliance or whatever. So it's not like that couldn't have happened. I mean, I guess it was also because Oda wanted to promote the Grand Fleet more so that when the time comes when they are eventually going to do that big event that he's saving up, we can be like, oh yeah, these guys, remember them? But me, I'm selfish, so I want some Sanji in this video, and the others too, to a lesser extent. So in this video, I'm explaining what I think may have happened and how that Dressrosa arc changes, because this video is going to be the Straw Hats versus the Doflamingo family, also known as what if all Straw Hats stayed on Dressrosa. But before we get into it, guys, please, y'all know what to do. Like the video, subscribe to the page for more One Piece content just like this, and share this around with all your friends who love One Piece. So where do we start off? I think I'm going to start off with the non-Straw Hats first, because it's just going to be the easiest and the shortest. So here I got Bartolomeo, Cavendish, and all of the rest of the Grand Fleet captains. They're going to be majorly fighting people like Baby 5, Buffalo, the Toy Soldiers, and just the rest of the fodder. And because as far as we're concerned, they're kind of fodderish in themselves, it just makes sense for the fodders to fight, not everyone is going to be Sanji, Zoro, Luffy, Jinbei level opponents. Somebody's got to take them out. It allows the Straw Hats then to take on those larger threats. And they can still have opportunities to show off the cool things that they did in the original series, right? Bartolomeo can still do his cool Bari Bari pistol thing that's a homage to Luffy. And we can still have Cavendish go in his Hakuba mode when he goes to sleep. When he goes to sleep, wakes up as a demon and then slaughters everybody. So obviously I imagine that happens as the fighting's starting, but there's something that happens first. So I did that first because I wanted to get it out of the way, but from here on out, things are going to happen more so sequentially. So now getting into the Straw Hats themselves, the first matchup that I got is Nami versus Giola. So the reason I have this first is just timeline wise, right, in terms of the sequential order of what happens in Dressrosa, because Giola was kind of the first mini boss when she was sent to capture the Sunny, and Chopper, Momo, Brook, and Nami had to be there to fight her. I genuinely think Nami could take out Giola at that time. Nothing that Nami has shown us has told me personally that she can't fight Giola and win. So in the original series, obviously it was Brook who used kind of trickery, the whole music is art, you love art, I love art, let's all get along, and tricked Giola before defeating her. But I actually think that Nami's climb attack can actually be a perfect counter to Giola's art powers, depending on the way that it works. Because think of it, art is usually like what? Drawn, painted, colored, right? So it stands to reason, at least Oda could have made it stand to reason, that there are certain things that can be done to counter art itself, and if that happens, its effects go away. So similar to what happened with Khalifa back on Enies Lobby, if Nami uses like rain spark or something and makes it rain, maybe the art powers, like maybe Giola's art powers won't work, or maybe the art that she got transformed into herself, that form could wear off. And she could finish the fight with, I don't know, like Fata Morgana or even Thunder Trap. And we barely see Nami use any of those techniques, like just throughout the story in general. So it'd be cool to flesh those out, especially now that we know she's definitely never using them again since she has Zeus. So after that happens, the story kind of continues to progress from there, right? We all know kind of the general gist of Dressrosa, and some more of the island shenanigans happen, and then finally it's time for Usopp versus Sugar, and kind of Treble on the side, but mostly Sugar. Now obviously this happens in the original timeline. We can't fix what ain't broken, but it actually is kind of broken, and which is why I'm gonna fix it in the way that I think Usopp should have beat Sugar. I think that in general it still would have happened, but there are just a few tweaks that I would have made. But then also remember that this is happening now before all the other fights, because it's through Usopp's knocking out of Sugar. All the toys go back to being people. It ruins Doflamingo's plans, which forces Doflamingo to use the birdcage, and all the chaos that ensues with that. Now in terms of the fight, it's obviously in the underground slave harbor where all the toy slaves are being put to work and all that. And you know, there's big crates around, there's ships, there's cargo boxes. So I think that Usopp honestly could use the environment to his advantage like a real sniper would. He can like duck and weave behind boxes and then fire off before hiding again. I think he could even pull off some cool trick shots or something like that to, you know, attack Sugar in her blind spots. And then I think the main like power up or way that he beats Sugar here is that he unlocks the observation haki that he would awaken the second time. He uses it this time. Just quickly, if y'all don't remember, Usopp awakened his observation haki the second time he needed to knock out Sugar, which was when he was flinging the bagworm star painted by Conjuro at the palace. So he didn't during that first fight in the slave harbor, but I think that in this version he would, and he could use it in combination with that environmental advantage that he has. And just because he's smart and his tactical brain is actually pretty good, he could probably like use observation to help him, I don't know, use the bagworm, he can figure something out. Now with the toys freed and the chaos started, Doflamingo obviously is gonna give the Straw Hats and all their allies like those star bounties. Oh, and real quick side note about those, I was just thinking about what the other Straw Hats would have been, right? Because we know that Robin and Frankie were 1, Zoro was 2, and Luffy was 3, and Law as well. So my plan was just to give everyone besides Sanji, so Brook, Chopper, Nami, they would get 1 as well, and then Sanji would probably get 2 to be on the same thing as Zoro, and then Usopp is obviously still the most at 5. So after all that, the Straw Hats kind of do their big group gathering, which is fairly standard for these kind of arcs, and then they charge and the main event actually starts. And I think that the first pair that get matched off and the first fight we see happen is Chopper versus Lao G. So one reason I match them is because they're both kind of like these physical martial art type fighters, right? So to see their fighting styles contrast would have been good. Chopper's got his Kung Fu point, Lao G's got his Gyoken. The Gyoken is such a funny fighting style because it takes advantage of like old man tropes. So then it would be also interesting to kind of see Chopper having to fight him ethically from an ethical standpoint of like, should I be attacking this like old decrepit man? Maybe he brings out a new move of Kung Fu point, or maybe a new point altogether, inspired by what he saw. Plus something about this matchup also just makes me really laugh. Like imagine, you know, that time when Lao G literally died in the middle of the battle. Imagine Chopper trying to fight him. This man's soul leaves his body and he's literally dying. And Chopper, as a doctor, obviously, is panicking and thinking, oh no, did I kill him? Like, I need to save him. Like, that would just be peak comedy. So the next matchup I got is Robin versus Mach Vice. So this is one of the latter ones that I did, and this was mostly at first out of necessity, just because, oh, Mach Vice is still left, Robin's still left, Why don't they fight? But the more I thought about it, the more it actually does make sense. Magvice's whole power, fighting style, everything like that is very simple. Jump into the air, make myself weigh a shit ton, and crush you. So I think Robin's like giant limbs and everything like that to counter kind of the weight aspect, that would have been interesting to see. Plus, actually, it makes sense because Hyrudin, the giant, is the one who took Magvice down the first time. So another giant, technically, taking Magvice down now would also make sense. I mean, Robin can still use the defensive techniques that she showed off, like when Kyros was fighting Diamante, the Kochoran thing with the butterflies and then the big tree protective thing, but then have them actually be useful instead of just being Rebecca's bodyguard. And then maybe actually what she could have done is used the Gigante Fleur to make that giant clone of her that she showed in Wano. Maybe she could have revealed it here, and even the Gigantia move where it uses Fishman Karate. She could have launched Magvice into the air to defeat him with that Fishman Karate strike. Next up on the docket, Frankie versus Senor Pink. Honestly, there's not a single thing I would change about this fight. No, for real, because besides Gear Fourth, this is my favorite thing about Dressrosa, period. Frankie always likes to fight like the macho men kind of people, you know, like the big tanks. Like, that's just the kind of person that he is. In that aspect, he's actually kind of a lot like Elfman from Fairy Tail, now that I think about it. Senor Pink had his whole thing about being hard-boiled. We first saw him and we were really confused, like, what's up with the man baby? Like, what's going on here? And then Oda just whipped out one of the saddest backstories in One Piece out of nowhere. Like, you know, all those memes, like, I know you know the memes where there's Senor Pink and it's like those who know and those who don't know. Yeah, and then even Frankie's like iron boxing to finish it out in the real slugfest. Like, it was honestly just perfect. At that time, iron boxing was even a new attack, so I couldn't even complain from that angle. Like, thank God it wasn't Radical Beam. After that, I think the final of the like lower officer fights is gonna go Brook versus Gladius. Firstly, aesthetically it just works. Both of them have this like trench coat that makes them give off this like 1900s English gentleman type of vibe. And I also think Brook's fruit is a good counter to Gladius's, again, depending on how Gladius's power actually works. Gladius's devil fruit is the pop-up fruit, which allows him to like rupture things and make them explode, right? I mean, who knows, like, depending on the mechanics of, since it's at its base kind of explosions, maybe Brook could contain the explosions in ice or freeze things before they pop. Like, what if he used his blizzard slice on something that Gladius was trying to pop and it got frozen over? Could he still pop it? And I mean, it wouldn't be a problem. Brook is definitely fast enough. Then I'm gonna take a page out of the Robin fight that I did and have Brook use the move that he would go on to use on Onigashima, that phrase d'armes orchestra. There it is. Yes, I speak French. Yes, we're moving on. Actually, interesting question. Could Gladius pop Brook's bones? I mean, in theory, he should be able to, but would it actually damage Brook or kill him? Because Brook is bound together by his soul energy, so even if he did get popped, could he not just assemble back together? If that's the case, then yeah, Brook may actually be the perfect counter to Gladius's power. Now we can get into the top officer fights, the ones against the card seats. I think we can still expect Law to fight against Trouble. I mean, they basically did in the original story. It was technically a tag team of Luffy and Law against Dofi and Trouble, but I mean, with Luffy and Dofi obviously fighting, it's gonna leave the two of them. Law can still use the Sturban blade and like cut up his body or whatever, just like he did. I think the only thing that I would change about this fight, to be honest, is to make it like one chapter or even less, just so that we limit the amount of time that we have to interact with Trouble. Actually, there was one more of those kind of lower fights. There is one person that I forgot to mention, but that was kind of on purpose since it's gonna tie into something that I'm gonna say later on. But that fight would be the fight against Bellamy against Dellinger. So besides the rest of the like Straw Hat Grand Fleet, and besides Sabo and the Revolutionaries who have their hands full with the Marines, and the Straw Hats obviously, Bellamy is the only other like relevant party. So since Dellinger is also like a minor character, the two of them fighting it off somewhere, I mean, that could be cool, right? I mean, they both have blonde hair. So the next fight is Sanji versus Diamante. So the next fight that I got is Sanji versus Diamante. So first things first, we can all agree that Diamante is a deplorable human being, right? Like what he did to Scarlet, what he continues to do to Rebecca, like just why, bruh? Like for what reason? It's also tragic. It makes me want to make my most hated characters in One Piece video, which I may actually do. So I think that that's where Sanji can have an end to like this fight, right? Where, you know, that moment when Diamante is about to off Rebecca, Sanji can swoop in and save her, and maybe Viola too, depending on, I don't know, timelines and stuff. But Sanji gets there, saves them, and then obviously is angered at Diamante for attacking women. So during the fight, I feel like Sanji would just have to adapt to the trickiness of the flag fruit. It's not all that strong in and of itself, but it just has some kind of trickiness aspect to it, the way that it can change things shape. So Sanji would have to like adapt to that, but obviously he can. He's Sanji. So then my thought for a new finisher move here would be the Diable Jambe Comet Strike. This would be a combination of Lion's Barrage, taijutsu found in Naruto, and that Soba Comet kick that he did against Page 1. Basically, he'll just keep kicking the opponent up like that into the air, teleport on top of them before slamming them down. Now, the reason that I had left Bellamy versus Dellinger till right before this fight is because there's another possibility, an alternative branch timeline, if you will, that I can see happening. And this would be in the case that some people are absolutely adamant that Kyros has to fight Diamante. I am not one of those people, mostly because I'm a Sanji fan and this is my video. But I mean, I can't deny that it makes sense since A, Kyros has a long-standing vendetta against Diamante for everything that he did to Scarlet and everything like that. And B, that's what happened in the original story. I still think that you could even have Kyros fight Diamante, lose, and then Sanji swoop in and save all of them. But you know what? To appease the 3 Kyros fans out there, this is my alternative configuration. So in the second option, Bellamy and Dellinger still fight, but then Dellinger wins. Dellinger, going into his like frenzy shark mode because he's half fishman or whatever, beats down Bellamy and is starting to go and attack like maybe some of the weaker members of the crew after they had won their fights, which is when Sanji swoops in and fights Dellinger. I mean, Sanji and Dellinger, they have some things in common, to be fair, the more I thought about it. I mean, for one thing, Sanji meeting another like cross-dresser Okama type person ever since his time with, you know, Ivankov and everything like that. There could have been some dialogue there. They both have a kick focus, right? As far as we see, Dellinger loves attacking with those heels, so he's primarily kicking. And then since he's a fishman, Sanji could maybe have some kind of like, I'm gonna grill you up or serve you up or some, I don't know, fillet you. I'm not a cooking guy, but Sanji is, so he'd know what to say. And then of course, this frees up Kyros to go and fight Diamante if people are clamoring for that. And then of course, the final 2 battles remain the exact same as in the original story. Zoro versus Pika and Luffy versus Doflamingo. So I mean, Zoro versus Pika can stay the same, right? Because we have first the reveal of what Pika's Delfruit does and how it's so like complicated to, it's not necessarily strong. Well, it is pretty strong because he can become a damn mountain, but it's more so tricky in that Zoro has to find out where Pika is. Then you have the humor of just Zoro always mocking Pika's laugh because Pika's voice is so high-pitched. You can still have the flashback training to Mihawk's Island, and you know, when Mihawk was telling Zoro about coating his blades in hockey, before Zoro actually does that and then finishes Pika off with Ichidai Sensen Daisen Sekai, which is like, side note, I've never understood why they chose this as the translation, but it's like the billionfold world tricholiochism or something like that. And then of course, Luffy versus Doflamingo, right? Starts off with Luffy saving Law, that cool like clash of their feet that can still happen. Getting a taste of Devil Fruit awakening when Doflamingo uses it and turns everything into string. And then of course, Luffy's flashing back to his training on Ruskaina with Rayleigh before finally unveiling Gear 4th and defeating Doflamingo with King Kongan. So yeah, I feel like there were actually quite a number of options if Oda had wanted to go the crew war route with it, you know, especially for it to draw parallels to Alabasta, since everyone knows that Alabasta and Dressrosa have such a strong connection to each other, parallel stories of each other. And again, of course I understand why Oda didn't do that. I'm not saying he should have. I just putting the possibility out there. So don't attack me in the comments. But what I do want you to tell me in the comments is what you think about these matchups. Do you like them? Do you think somebody should fight somebody else? Something should be swapped? Have I forgotten anybody? Because Dressrosa was a lot of people, so there's a strong chance that I did. So that's the end of the video, guys. Now, please, you already know what I'm gonna say. It's my catchphrase at this point. Like the page, subscribe to the channel for more One Piece content just like this. I got some interesting things coming up for December times, including top 30s somewhere in there. And then share the channel around, share the video around with all your friends who love One Piece. Like I said, I want to make this a community, but I need your help to do it. So get on it. Either way, that's going to be it for me. I'll catch you on the next one. And always remember, One Piece, one life.